Let me ask you something. When did you last take a case that wasn't worth your time? A simple locate, a quick skip, a favor for a paralegal. Avi Klein calls those small wins, and in his experience, they're where the big breaks start. Most people don't need a PI today. Your real job in business development is to show up consistently. So when they need someone, you're the one they call. That's step one. Step two, be the most helpful person in their Rolodex. Return the call, share a resource, leave a card that says something. Avi's built a business not by chasing shiny logos or slapping investigations on a letterhead, but by paying attention to the human side of this work. How you handle the low stakes cases earns you the high trust relationships. So if you've been wondering why some PIs get all the repeat clients and others are always scrambling, today's show might be just what you need. Welcome to today's PI Education webinar. I'm Hal Humphreys, and I'm joined by Avi Klein, founder of the Klein Group. Avi is a private investigator in Oakland, California, with a law degree from USC. He's also a former investigative journalist out there in Washington, D.C., covering finance, defense, and national security industries. Avi is now a managing partner at the Klein Group, a firm specializing in litigation support, due diligence for investors, locating heirs, and defending contested wills. Avi's a rare mix of hands-on investigative experience and real-world business sense. He's earned a solid name in the field by thinking deeply about how PIs can do better work and build lasting careers by doing the job well. Avi, thank you for taking the time to be here. Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into this work?
Thank you, Hal. It's really great being here again. I really appreciate all the work that you do with this programming, LinkedIn, and everywhere else to really raise the profile of high quality work in the investigations industry. I came to this business in kind of an unusual way. As you mentioned, I went to law school. I was one of those people that got there, and really within about a month or two, I realized that was not really the career for me. My mother, God bless her, she made me finish. She made me take the bar exam, but that was basically the extent of my legal career. I moved to Washington, D.C., worked as a journalist, tried a bunch of different things that were not really the right fit and were bad timing business-wise. Trying to become a journalist in Washington, D.C. in 2004 was about the worst possible time to try to do that. Eventually, I got into politics. I made my way to the Obama reelect in 2012, where, I worked for 18 months on the opposition research desk, focused on Bain Capital, which was Mitt Romney's private equity fund, sort of became the world's expert on Bain Capital. And then after that, it was just a small, short hop into the investigations world. I joined the Mintz Group, which is a very large, very successful international investigations and due diligence firm with offices all over the world, hundreds and hundreds of investigators working very, very high stakes cases. And then about 7 years ago, I went on my own and opened up my own practice.
That is quite the ride. And let me ask you this question. This is off script, but are you from California, Avi?
I am, yeah. I
And
grew up.
did you pass the notorious California bar?
I did not. I did
Okay.
not. I passed the Maryland bar.
Okay. Okay.
I was living in Washington, D.C., and the choices are Maryland, Virginia, or D.C. And
I've heard absolute horror stories about the California bar exam.
every once in a while, I think, well, maybe I should take it here in California. Maybe that would expand my business. But I've heard those same stories, Hal, and I don't think I have the. I think at my age, I don't think I have the energy and the focus anymore.
I hear you totally. Now, Avi, I saw a post on LinkedIn that you put up that stuck with me. It was a while back. You talked about doing a small favor for someone, something you didn't even get paid for. And that ended up landing you a long-term client who's been with you ever since. You said it's the small things that lead to big things. Can you break that down for us? Why do you think so many investigators overlook the small stuff?
I think there's sort of two elements here. One is sort of how do you build trust with clients? And then secondly, how do you perceive your relationship with money, which are really like two different questions. On the trust side, one of the hardest parts about being a private investigator is that you do something that people think is shady. It is suspicious. People have only known private investigators from movies, from TV shows. It concerns them. And lawyers in particular are concerned because you act as their agent, it's their reputation, they're spending their client's money. They usually have to get consent or permission from the client to retain you. And so everyone in that whole line has got to feel like there's something valuable is going to happen and something ethical is going to happen, and that they can trust what you're going to do. And one of the most foundational things you have to do in this business is establish that level of trust with attorney clients. They need to understand that what you're doing is not anything like that whatsoever. And one of the ways you can do that is by starting small, which is a client calls you, maybe they ask for a small favor, that happens, or maybe they just have a small case, like a locate that they're trying to find someone. And this is low stakes. This is not a large expense for them. It's like a first date, kind of getting to know you situation, where you have the opportunity to put on your best face like you would on a first date, do the best job that you possibly can in order to give them a sense, oh, there's some real quality in here. So maybe there'll be a second date. And so very often on these first cases, I am giving free labor away. I mean, I'm billing my clients, they're getting paid, but I'm really making sure that this is my shot to really show them what I know and how I work. And once they see that, then we've established trust and confidence together. And then they'll be more comfortable saying, okay, well, now I have an asset search. Now I have a large due diligence project. Now we need to unwind this complicated intellectual property matter. Part of the issues of trust here, Hal, is that much of what we do, especially if you're doing public records work and things like that, is that the work is kind of in your own head. And it's hard for another person to see what you do. You have to, in the end, they have to take it on trust that you did the searches and you didn't find something and you did everything appropriately. And you can tell them I searched here and I searched there, but they can't see the work any more than I can see the work that the plumber does when he's under my house. I have to take his word for it as a professional. And anything you can do to establish that type of trust is a good thing to do.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that is the absolute first thing we have to work on is trust. And you brought up television shows and movies, and I have yet to see a movie or television or fictional PI depiction that doesn't have them doing something cagey or shady along the way. They're always breaking into somebody's office or house or doing stuff like that. And it does give us a bad reputation with the general public. And sometimes a lot of my conversations with attorneys are, and I've found, and I think you probably have too, you know, some attorneys are really kind of skeptical about hiring private investigators because of the shady business. Some attorneys really want to hire an investigator because of the shady business. And I have to have those conversations on both sides.
That's right. That's exactly right. And of course, that's part of your own business practice too, of how you interact in those situations. And then can you turn that? Can you take a client who, the lawyers who have those ideas are not themselves wicked people
No.
who are thinking about doing dirty deeds. They're thinking they're trying to solve their clients' problems. They've heard of this. They know it's a little shady, but they think it might possibly be legal. They're not really sure. I mean, most lawyers don't really have any idea of where the boundary lines of trespassing are, of whether a bank search is lawful. They don't know. How would they know?
Yeah. It's
And
not what
our
they
job
do.
is to educate them. I saw a Reddit post this morning in a totally different industry where somebody was posting, he was a general contractor, and he said he had some crazy client who wanted him to build a shed out of wood pallets, like the thing that you would put goods on, right? And he said, what can I do? That's not going to work. And someone said, write back to him and say, okay, I can actually do the same thing for you. And here's a budget that we can do the exact same thing and get actually a better result, but we don't have to use those cheapo wood pallets. There's no reason to do that. And taking that and just turning it on the client and saying, look, but you don't have to do that. Let me tell you, no legality, no illegality whatsoever. They want to hear that. They don't want to do that most of the time.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite examples of PIs and ethics and those kind of things. You remember the movie Chinatown?
Sure.
Do you remember the follow-up, the sequel to that, The Two Jakes?
No.
All right, so it's a great movie. I mean, it's not a great movie. It's a PI fiction, or it is what it is. I loved it. It's a great movie. Harvey Keitel and Jack Nicholson. And there's a scene in the movie where this lady is asking Jack Nicholson's character, Jake Gittes. She goes, "Mr. Gittes, are you an honest man?" And he said, he said, "Lady, what I do for a living isn't very reputable, but I am, which I guess makes me the leper with the most fingers in this town."
Yeah.
And I think that's it. You gotta be the leper with the most fingers in this town. People are going to have their perceptions of what PIs do, but when we do our work ethically, when we do it legally and do it like professionals, we're better. The LinkedIn post you that I saw a couple of months ago, it's probably 3 months back, was talking about doing a favor and turning that into a long-term client. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about what the favor was and how that relationship worked out and why it matters so much to do those little favors along the way?
Yeah. So, as you've said at the beginning, nobody needs us right now. You want someone to remember you when the time comes that they need a private investigator. And anytime that you can make a solid connection with a person, a human connection with a person, you are building the stepping stones for the future relationship. So a very common thing that happens to me 2 or 3 times a year is a lawyer that I know in my network will reach out because they have a personal problem. And it very often involves either themselves or their adult children and alcohol. So I've had a couple times when lawyers that I know have been trying to apply to bar membership in another state. And in the interim, from when they were 25 and they passed the California bar the first time, and now they want to join the Florida bar, they had a DUI or something like that. And now they have to go chase down those records because they've got to explain it all. Your Honor, it was all in the past, et cetera, et cetera. And I can just help them easily figure out how to get those records. It's not a big deal for me to go do that. It's really a short amount of work, but that lawyer will remember me forever.
Yeah.
And they will give me all their referrals for the rest of their life. So, in a certain sense, I'm just buying referrals
Yeah.
by doing a very small little thing. They remember you didn't charge them for it. They remember you were friendly and non judgmental about it. They remember that you gave them a little bit of advice about where these records might be and all this. They remember it. And then, yeah, you might not hear from them for a while, but when and if they do ever think that they want a private investigator, you will just get that call. And I think being flexible and kind, and like on a personal thing, like they're not making any money on it. If a lawyer's making money on it, then I've got to make a little money too.
Yeah.
But to help a lawyer with a small personal thing or a thing with their kid, like I had once a kid got a DUI and he was in college at Auburn University or something, and they went through all this trouble to get it expunged. This is a family that had resources and they hired a lawyer, and then they wanted to test to see if it would still be available. Would a prospective employer be able to find that record now that they had paid all this money to get it expunged? Again, not a big deal for me to just go run the local court search docket in that county and run it through my databases and see if it still pops there or anything. It was just 10 minutes of work. It's not a big deal. But to the client, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, Hal, that I would say is that I think that a lot of investigators spend too much time thinking about the dollar they're about today and the dollar today, and not about all the dollars that are going to be available for them in the future. I'm 46 years old. If all goes well, I've got another 25 years in this business. And I'm thinking about all the money and all the revenue I'm going to get from all my clients for the next 25 years. They're all my age. They're all going to be working. And thinking that you just need to grab the dollar now by charging someone for something is short-sighted business thinking. You should be thinking about relationships and the long-term value of those relationships like a dividend-producing stock.
Yeah.
It's not sexy. It's not fun. You own some Coca-Cola, but those dividends, and you reinvest them, they mount up over time.
Yeah.
And if you're just thinking buy and sell right now, just trying to grab something, you'll get the dollar now, but you might not get all the other dollars in the future. And that's not good business thinking.
I think that's a key thing. I'm a huge fan of Patagonia gear, and I know there's jokes out there about Patagucci and all that, but I'm a huge fan of Patagonia gear because it's well made, it lasts, it does what it's designed to do. And I read a book by Yvon Chouinard a couple of years ago called "Let My People Go Surfing," and he talks about do really quality work, make really good quality products that will last. don't worry about the money. If you do good work and you do it over and over again, the money will come. And I think a lot of times we get stuck in this notion of, I've got this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill that I have to get taken care of. I need to get money in the door. But if you can settle down and look at that long-term horizon, we oftentimes do much better when we do that, as opposed to thinking about every penny along the way.
For sure, for sure. It's like I said, all of this is about relationships. It's not sales. It's not Glengarry Glen Ross. It's nothing. It's not like always be closing. It's not anything like that. This is really just about creating. And I think the most valuable thing you can do in this business is what they call like the know, like, trust, and refer model,
Yep.
where you get to know people, they come to like you, they trust you, and then they refer to you.
Yeah.
And you just repeat it over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Now, I was in the car a couple of years ago with Brian Willingham, fellow investigator, and I got a call from a client, and I told the client, "Hey, I'm actually not in the office right now. I'm on the way to a PI conference. I can't get to this until Monday." And Brian said, "Oh man, that's really not the way to do this. You need to respond and be responsive to your clients." The things Brian didn't know was, number one, this is a long-term client, and he has a bad habit of calling and saying, "Hey, I need this, I need this." And we know each other really well. And I feel comfortable after years of building that trust that I can push him downstream till Monday to take care of the thing. But, you talked about being quick to respond, answering the phone, replying as fast as you can. Those kind of things make you stand out. Tell me about that.
Sure. So you need to understand who your clients are. I can only talk about situations where your clients are attorneys because my clients are all attorneys and I really don't take non-attorney clients. Um, you're in the service business. You may think that you're a private investigator and you may think that you are so clever and smart, but in the end, you are providing professional services to attorneys.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, in the world of professional services, people want to buy products from vendors who match their style and place in the market.
Yeah.
So there are types of investigations that I can never get because, but they go to my former employer, like Mintz Group, because they're a very, very high profile white shoe firm. And all the big white shoe Manhattan law firms want to work with them because they kind of match up. At the same time, you also have to match in style and communication and be attentive to their needs, not yours. It used to be when I was a kid at the Supercuts hair salon chain, they had a campaign, an advertising campaign. I still remember asking my father because I didn't understand what it meant. And it said, "We cut for your ego, not ours," which was sort of like a way of distinguishing themselves from a hoity-toity salons where you've got some fancy hairdresser who's going to give you their vision. No, the job is to provide the service that helps the attorney advance their business.
Yeah.
They're the ones whose business you need to help succeed, not yours. If you help them succeed, you'll succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. No
And
doubt.
what lawyers want, and look, the lawyers you're working for, they have clients too. And their clients expect them to pick up the phone when they call and to be responsive to their needs. At the same time, then the lawyers expect you to be responsive to their needs as well. And the easiest way you can do that is just through clear communication. I actually, I don't know the circumstance of that client and Brian's criticism or critique, but it's okay to tell a client, "I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to get to this today. These are the circumstances." Lawyers are human beings. They're not mean people. They're just people just like you and me who have families, and they understand that kids get sick and you have an appointment, and that's okay. It's a rare circumstance where something really has to be done today.
Yeah.
But what they want is to know that you are taking care of their problem.
Yeah.
Because the ideal dynamic between a lawyer and a private investigator is the lawyer goes to the private investigator and says, "I have this problem. Can you resolve it?" And you say, "Yes, I can resolve it." And then you just get back to them in 2 weeks and they don't have to think about it until then because they know it's in your hands and they will get the result on time. And
And
so just communicating back and just saying, "I got your message. We're in alignment. I hear you. I'm addressing your problem. Here's a clear timeline of when I'm going to be able to do it. Here's the situation." And then we're like, "Oh, okay." But if they don't hear from you,
yeah.
if you don't respond, now there's a problem. Now they're worried. Now they're concerned. Now you're not meeting them where they need to be and where they need to be with their client. because their client may want to know, hey, did you get that private? Let me know once you've got that private investigator engaged. And now they've got their client hassling them, wanting to know where you are.
Yeah.
And that's the worst position to be in.
Yeah, it's horrible. And here's the thing. So Brian and I have been friends for quite some time. And what happened in that situation is I took the feedback. I listened to it. I considered it, and I applied it going forward. Like I now think to myself, is this truly something I can put off, or should I respond immediately? Like, it was really good feedback for me to get in a real-time situation from a trusted friend in the business saying, hey, maybe get back with your clients sooner than later. I think look, at the end of the day, we're all out here trying to do the best we can. And part of that building trust is listening to our fellow investigators that have really good feedback for us. I want to tell a real quick story about, you talked about what's the meet, trust, like, what's that? Refer. Okay. So along these lines, for our listeners that are wanting to get new clients, so want to get new people in the door, new attorneys that you want to work for. I had an occasion, Avi, out in Texas, where there was one attorney that was very well respected. He and I had met a couple of times. We liked each other. We got on pretty well. I would be in Dallas working on a project, and I would call Dan Hurley, and I would say, Dan, I'm going to be in Lubbock this evening. Can I buy your dinner? And he would say, man, I'd love to, but I'm in the middle of a trial. Can't do it tonight, but let me know next time you're in town. The few times he said, man, that'd be great. Meet me over at Cafe J. I'll buy you a cocktail. I would rent a car in Dallas, drive to Lubbock, stay a night in the hotel in Lubbock, go to cocktails with Dan Hurley, drive back the next morning to Dallas and continue working on the project. But I did the math on this, and this was when I was first trying to get my criminal defense investigative service really up and running. And I think I spent somewhere north of $5,000 in rental cars and hotels and meals just to build that trust and that relationship. And then it turns out Dan Hurley's been one of my absolute best clients for the past 12 years now. That's the kind of stuff that you can do as an investigator. If you've got the skills to talk to people and spend time with people, spend a little bit.
Yeah. That's investing in relationships is a much better investment than like investing in like a fancy website or something passive. A lot of what we have to do as investigators is go out and seek the clients that we need, and investing in that time and energy to have that face-to-face or the Zoom networking event or something like that pays much more dividends than fancy business cards, webs. I see a lot of guys who go out and they go out on their own, and they seem to spend a lot of money on like SEO and websites. It's a very passive way of getting clients, which will have some success depending on the circumstances and where you are in the market, but will leave you vulnerable to the vagaries of that approach.
Yeah.
And you will be passively getting clients and not really have much control over who they are. What I like about the story that you just told, Hal, is you identified someone who you saw was like a potential long-term value to you, and you invested in that relationship.
Yeah. And not only has it been, economically really good for me, but I'm traveling to Montana in September or in August to spend a weekend with Dan Hurley and another attorney friend of mine, just because we've got that kind of relationship now. This is a really good segue into the next section, which is defining your target market. You've said the most neglected step in launching a PI business is defining your target market. Why do people miss that, and how do you approach it? I mean, here's the thing. I knew the work Dan Hurley did. I knew it was in the arena that I wanted to play in, and I pursued him. So talk about getting clear on who you serve, and how do you define your target market as a PI?
I think that the thing that is hard for people to do is, most people come into this business not from a business environment at all. Most licensed private investigators in America are former law enforcement, and those aren't businesses. It's a job, but it's not a business that has sort of the need to obtain clients and maintain billing and think about profitability and so on. That's just not what that is. And so it can be a little scary and confusing to go out on your own. And I think that the habit that most PIs fall into is they'll just want to take anything. And so you'll see on their website that they will offer the broadest range of services possible. Everything from background checking to close protection to bug sweeping and surveillance and anything else in the world, because their SEO partners told them you need to have this on the website, or they want to grab anything that might come. And again, this is a very passive way of thinking about your business, where it is plausible that a person will put in Lubbock, Texas surveillance investigator, and it'll pop up and you'll get a call from that guy and maybe you'll get a gig from it. But that'll probably just be like a one-off kind of thing, and there's no sort of relationship in it. And then maybe you'll get another, like a little random thing of some other thing. But it might not actually suit your skill set. It might not actually be what you like or what you enjoy. I don't really believe that there's a person out there who can do all those things effectively, as much as we'd like to believe that's true. I just don't think that that's true.
I saw an investigator one time that had, I think there, I may be wrong about this, but I'm just going to say it because if I'm not spot on right, I'm real close. On a CV had 16 areas of expertise in which this investigator felt like he was competent to testify as an expert witness in each one of these 16 areas. And I wasn't buying it. And turns out the opposing counsel wasn't buying it, and the judge wasn't buying it.
Yeah. Most people are better served by focusing on a niche and distinguishing themselves within that niche. Private investigators in America are a dime a dozen. The barriers to entry, particularly for former law enforcement, are incredibly low, which is not to degrade anyone, but anyone who's a former law enforcement can more or less, like especially here in California, get a license for very little effort and very little cost. But the problem is that it makes it very hard to distinguish yourself. All the guys' websites say they can do all these things. So what's special about you? And when you go out and you're trying to talk to lawyers and sell, how are you making it clear that what you're doing is something of higher value? And so a better approach is to think, well, one, what are you good at and what do you want to do? Because if you're not good at it and if you don't want to do it, it's not going to, you're not going to like it. You're not going to be happy in the business. When I went out on my own, I was very clear. I did not want to do a lot of due diligence background checking work. I don't market it at all. I don't sell it. I get a little bit of it because clients sort of connect with me and then they want it, and that's fine. But I don't enjoy that kind of work. And so I focus my business development efforts on working with litigators and lawyers like that. So for a person who's starting out, who's leaving law enforcement and thinking about what they want to do, thinking about what you like, what you want to do is the first step. And then the second step is thinking like, wait, so who is the universe of people who want that? Because sometimes a person will say to me, I'll talk to someone in an informational interview and they're going out on their own and they'll say, and my buddy, Joe knows a guy at that law firm and he's going to connect me. And I'm like, oh, what kind of law firm is it? And the guy's like, I'm not really sure. I don't know. Okay, so it's not really useful to you. What you need to do is think like, okay, in your town, in your city, let's say you've decided that what you really want to do is very common, focus on criminal defense work. Everything you're doing with your business development and your marketing should then just be focused, targeted on that. And your branding should reflect that. So that when a lawyer is thinking, who is he going to hire? Does he want to hire the fellow who does 16 different things and it's not clear from his website like what he's actually good at? Or does he want to go with a guy who, when you look at his LinkedIn and you look at his website, you say, whoa, this guy is deep in the world of criminal investigations. He knows criminal investigation. That's the person that is more likely to get the business.
Yeah, no doubt. And here's another point I'd like to make on that is if you have a niche that is your thing, that is your wheelhouse, right? And you market on that, and there are other services that you can do, and you can service your client with those other things, that's a useful thing. But if it's a thing that you don't do, but someone in this business that you trust, that you respect, that you've built a relationship with over the years, that you can refer your client to. I think this is really important, Avi. A lot of investigators want to take on everything. I've gotten more value out of referring my long-term loved clients to other investigators who do a thing better than I do. My clients, that builds more trust, and they know they can come to me for those kinds of things. And that's a valuable thing to give to your clients.
Yeah. I think that for what I'm always trying to do with my attorney clients is to be in a position of collegiality with them. Yes, I'm a vendor to them, but I want them to see me as a peer. And it's a little easier for me. I went to law school, and I can kind of chat with them in a way that maybe other investigators might not feel as comfortable or as fluent doing. But I want my clients to see me as like a trusted advisor on matters related to investigations, general security, sort of general issues involving fraud and matters like that, that they can call me and ask me a question. And they will get a referral. I'm not a forensic accountant, and we don't offer forensic accounting services. I refer out forensic accountants all the time to my clients because when they're thinking about it, they think, oh, who would know the answer to that? Oh, it must be Avi. Avi will know. And sometimes there's other types of services in this world that I don't do. And again, they say, Avi, do you know a guy who does bug detection? I don't want anything to do with any bug detection services, but I know a guy locally who does that, and people like him, and they're grateful to have the referral and know a person who can give it to them.
I just, as we're on this webinar, got a text from a paralegal that said, random question, do you know anyone in the surrounding area that could help check this office for bugs? Literally as we're doing the webinar. And I've got a referral for them. I'm not going to do that work. That's not what I do. Let's do this. I want to take a real quick break. We have a promo from PI Education. And thank you to everybody that's in the room today. We really appreciate you being here. I'm enjoying the chat with Avi. It's always good to talk with you, Avi, number one. And number two, I think this kind of promotional, like how do we build a business as private investigators, is as important as the individual education components that we offer through PI Education. So there's a discount code up on the screen for you right now. Get you 10% off of any course from PIeducation.com. Use the promo code TRENCHES10. That's TRENCHES 10. So yeah, check it out. If you need education, check us out. So let's talk, Avi, about one of my pet peeves, and this is branding business cards, presents, that business. I have a very, very specific bit of branding that I use in my business cards, in my notes that I send handwritten notes to people with. My website, I have not really paid enough attention to it lately, but it is still better than a lot of websites that I see out there where it's like, it's got the shape of a badge and maybe a GIF of an eagle flapping its wings, and it looks MySpace circa 2005. Let's talk about branding business cards and presents and how you like to approach those things.
Sure. So number one, I think all this ephemeral stuff, websites, business card, logo, letterhead, is marginal. Like, I think a website is really important as something that you have as a landing page. People expect to find it. They want to be able to look you up and see that you're legit. That doesn't mean you have to have something that's fancy. It doesn't have to have a lot on it. In fact, one of my favorite local investigators, I don't know if he's on here today, he just told me that he and his partner just put up the second page on their webpage. So they only had one page for a long time when he went on. But it had their name, it had their contact information, it made it clear who they were. And really, that's all you need for a web page. And you could do more and things like that, but you don't want to overthink all that kind of stuff. That's just passive stuff. What I'm thinking about with my branding really is making it feel safe to clients and natural and normal. And I'm trying to meet my clients where they are. So my clients are all attorneys. They work in large firms in San Francisco and Los Angeles. They have boutique practices here in the Bay Area. Their approach is professional and cool. And if you look at their website, it's lighter colors. It's professional, like an accountant. And I'm trying to make what I'm doing look like that. The stuff where you see the guys who are doing the stuff with the eagle, and or maybe they have like more of a Sherlock Holmes motif. That's another popular one. Sometimes you get a mashup. It's like a Sherlock Holmes and the bald eagle and the flag and all that.
And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with eagles. We like our eagles, but just use them sparingly.
Exactly. This is, don't call up Washington, D.C. and say that I was saying bad things about bald eagles. I love the bald eagle. In fact, there's one in my neighborhood. My wife keeps telling me she's seeing it. But you have to think about how people are going to perceive you when you do that. I think for most attorneys, I think that look is the wrong look. It looks militaristic. It has a political edge that some clients will not like. It just is going to put off attorneys. I think a lot of attorneys are just going to be put off by that. But your mileage may vary. I'm here in the Bay Area where lawyers are more liberal and they are not going to go so much for sort of patriotic law enforcement imagery. It might be for sure that a private investigator in Texas, that's very effective, and I can't say. But I feel very strongly about this, Hal, and I know people disagree with me. And I know people think that I am subtweeting them, including some of my dearest friends, when I say this. I don't think an investigations firm should have the word investigations in the name of the company. I think it's actually very valuable to have flexibility in the name and how you identify yourself when you call other people, because it's not important for the sake of branding for your clients at all. They can understand exactly who you are. Nobody's confused about who the Klein Group is. But I want to be able to call people and honestly say the name of my company and not set off red flags when I do it.
Yeah.
I might want to. There are definitely times when I want to call up and say, hi, my name is Avi Klein. I'm a private investigator with the Klein Group in Oakland. There's also times when I want to just call and say, hi, I'm calling from the Klein Group in Oakland. I'd like to chat with you about this.
Yeah.
And not say that. But not have anyone be able to say later, oh, he didn't identify who he was. He didn't properly say his company name or something like that.
The interesting thing I found, so we're talking about this in real time in front of a lot of people. My company is called Find Investigations. It's right there in the title of my company. It's a decision I made on the very front end. We had this, we had a word search puzzle that we had like historic PIs and fictional PIs in the word search puzzle that was the leading part of the web page. And it just kind of organically came out as Find Investigations. Here's the thing. What I found, Avi, is the website, people almost never hire an investigator by going to a website and saying, oh, I want to hire this person. They've already done some research. They go to the website to verify how you present. So the naming of the investigative firm, I think there are a lot of things to consider there. Like Brian Willingham, and we're talking about websites. Brian Willingham's website is one of my favorites. I talk about this all the time. Go to diligentiagroup.com. He's got a really nice, clean website. I think clean is useful. I think just focusing on a couple of things that are in your wheelhouse is really good. If you go to Avi's website, what's that URL, Avi?
Klein Group, LLC.com.
The Klein Group, LLC.com. Another clean, nice website. What we're looking for is verification for people that are trying to find out information about us, that we're professional, that we present well, that we focus on the areas that we said we focused on. That's it. I don't look at the website as a way to drive traffic, number one. Number two, I don't think any of my clients at this point remember the name of my investigative agency. They're calling Hal Humphreys. And I think the Klein Group, they're calling Avi Klein because they know and trust you. I do have a question I want to get to real quick. Would be helpful to dig in a little bit about tactics to initiate those initial relationships with attorneys. And I think this is a really good thing to kind of dig into real quick because I told the story of my spending money to go buy dinner for this attorney that I really want to work with. What are some specific tactics that you've used, Avi, to initiate those initial contacts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is the number one. Actually, this is a very important issue here. I think a lot of people don't think about, because I'm doing all this. I'm saying, don't do all these passive things. Don't focus so much on that. And you want, okay, so then what should you do? Okay, let's assume you've already gone and you've identified your target market and you have a sense of that. What you need to do is figure out a way to meet your potential clients. Okay, so this is not about sending mail to them. And I'm not talking about this thing that I sometimes see online where it says you should go door to door to attorney offices and bring them your materials. If you're in a small town, then that might work. I don't know. But you cannot in San Francisco just walk into a building and just start knocking on doors to meet attorneys. And if you can, they probably are pretty poor, broke attorneys because they're in some sort of strange storefront that you can just walk right into. That's not good, and that's not good use of your time. That's not good value for your time because it's a one-off, one guy. And you're probably, even if you meet someone, you're going to meet the paralegal in the front or something like that.
Yeah.
Instead, you need to think, okay, where do attorneys congregate? Where could I go where I could get like good value and meet a whole bunch of attorneys? Because the number one job is to make yourself available to them. They don't know about you, and most lawyers don't know any private investigators whatsoever. So if you can meet some lawyers, you already have done half the job, because before they didn't know any private investigators. Now they do know a private investigator.
Yeah.
Now they still have to like you as a private investigator, but you've already done some good work. And so the number one things you can do are, like I said, where do attorneys congregate? You want to go to bar association events. You don't have to be a lawyer to go to these events. It's a good practice. Many people will just join the local bar association anyways, because maybe they have some events you can only go to for members and whatever. But you want to go to these events. What I have found, and they will have CLE events and all kinds of speeches, but what I actually find was the most effective, especially before the Zoom era, was going to happy hours. And every bar association has regular happy hours, and every bar association has sub chapters within it for the criminal defense bar, and for the lawyers under 35, and for the African American Lawyers Association, and the intellectual prop, every type of segment you could imagine. And each one of them has their own happy hours and little events. And where I live here in Alameda County, there are 6 or 7 different counties that are all within like a 45-minute drive of me. I could spend all my time every evening. And actually, I used to when I was younger and starting out, and I had a small baby at home, and I very often would have to tell my wife, sweetie, I'm sorry, I can't come home. I have another happy hour I have to go to. But my job was to create a critical mass of lawyers in my network. And so here is the vibe. And this works also for, we can talk about Zoom networking as well. But the general approach here is, we talked about know, like, trust, and refer. You've got to meet a person, make a positive impression, not sell to them, but make them just feel like you have a nice vibe. Get a business card, follow up the next day or 2 days later. It was great meeting you. I'd love to learn more about your practice. Could I take you out for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Very low stakes, not a big deal, no pressure, collegial. Collegial. It's a natural thing for a colleague to ask another colleague if they'd like to have coffee sometime next week. And if you can do that in a way that shows that you're confident, you're not begging, it says, no, it's a normal thing. If I asked Hal was my colleague. If I asked Hal, like he said, you want to, let's go grab a coffee, let's grab lunch. It's just a normal thing. People are doing that all the time.
Yep.
And then when you're there in your coffee and it's about an hour, you're going to be sitting there. Again, you're not selling. No one's selling anything. I think this is the hardest thing for people to understand. You're building relationships. You're not closing. You're not trying to find some language that's going to get them to sign on the bottom line. You're not doing any of that salesy stuff that you see people talking about on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. You are building a real relationship. And one of the smartest, most important things that someone told me, my former boss at Mintz Group, when I was first starting to do this, and I said, I feel sort of uncomfortable. There's all this talk online about closing and all this kind of things with the sales. And he's like, no. He said, when I go out and I am meeting with potential clients, 80, 90% of the time, we're just talking about our kids and vacation. And, we won the college football team, or did you see that TV? It's just the casual things that you do. Because all you're doing is just developing relationships and getting someone to like you naturally, not by forcing it, not by tricks, not by sales, but by being your authentic self, which gives them confidence that when they need something, you're going to be a person not only who can do the work, but you're going to be someone that they're going to enjoy working with. And that's the ballgame.
People can feel when they're being sold. It's just evident, right out of the gate. And I'll tell you, I'm going to go back to my Dan Hurley story. Over a 6-month time frame, I probably went out there 5 times, roughly once a month, stayed in the hotel, took him to dinner, had a chat. Not once did I ask for any work. We just chatted. We just got to know each other. And then I get a call from him, and it ends up being a 4-year case that goes to trial twice, 6 weeks per trial. That one case ends up being like it paid back all the money I'd spent in building that relationship. And I've got a good friend in the process. All right. So we've kind of walked through the how to approach the work, how to do small things in the front end to get your foot in the door, to help someone out that you don't charge for. We've talked about building trust. We've talked about kind of the branding, the website stuff. I would like to say, Avi, for the investigators out there listening, when it comes to a business card, I don't obsess about business cards, but what I do find is when I get a really poorly designed, poor quality business card, I usually just kind of I've got a drawer over here full of business cards that just didn't land for some reason. A good quality, a well-designed, I think minimal is better on a business card. Something that is memorable. Does that guarantee they're going to keep it and pay attention to it? Most people toss business cards. They yeah, okay. And they get home and they toss them in a drawer. But if it's thick, if it's good quality, if it's well put together and it's minimal, I think it has a better chance of sticking.
I agree. I mean, I think that I think LinkedIn is sort of more effective as that sort of like particular like connection. Um, but a business card, if someone gives you a business card and it's clear that they like input no money, it's not even the design. To me, it's like if you just bought the cheapest possible thing with just like
It's still
really
got the perforated edges on it.
oh, I mean, oh my God, if you this is like that's even worse than only having the 45-minute limit on the Zoom call and having to boot people off on your call. Which is upsetting to me.
Yeah.
A business card like that and having a good quality business card, to a certain extent, it's sort of like, how are you dressed? Which is, you don't need to wear a suit and you don't even need to wear a collared shirt like I like to wear, because that's just like my personal style. But when you go places and you're meeting people, you should look clean and tidy.
Yeah.
And look like you care.
Yeah.
And the
That
business
goes
card, to a
into
certain extent, is that.
yeah, absolutely. That goes into the business card and the letterhead and all the things that are the little attendant bits that you're going to put in front of people. Look like you care. I think
Yeah.
that's the number of other investigators are out there throwing out, really poorly designed cards printed on really bad cardstock, if cardstock at all. Is there are a lot of them out there. So if you just take a little bit of time and spend some time, talk to a graphic designer, hire a graphic designer, spend a little bit of money on getting it to look right and feel right and all those things. Those things do make a difference. You're not going to be able to track back, I got X number of dollars in business in 2024 because I had this one business card designed and printed. But I think it does make a difference to just think about how you present as a professional. This really goes well with, the website, the meeting, when you meet people in person, when you spend time with people, present well, act like a professional. If you're going to happy hours, I mean, Avi, you and I have talked on occasion about the number of times we end up at happy hours. Pro tip, limit yourself to one cocktail, or even better pro tip, get a soda with a lime in it. Nobody knows it's not vodka soda.
Yeah. Yeah. Your brand is the accumulation of all these things together.
Yeah.
And every single one of them. And I want to just to follow up what I mentioned before, is like having a good LinkedIn page. You do not have to be a LinkedIn content guy. People know me, and I do a lot of LinkedIn content. You don't have to do what I do with LinkedIn content, but having a page that you're clearly paying attention to, that explains what you do, it is really the landing page for professional services right now, much more than websites are.
Yeah.
And people do expect that you have a LinkedIn page and that they can see who you are and where you came from. And it's your opportunity to shine. It doesn't cost anything to create it. You can take your time with it. The tools are really simple to use. And you can build out like a little mini website for yourself that shows what you do, not the 18 things you do, but as a central part of your branding. Like, I am Avi Klein, the criminal defense investigator. Here you can see, here's my experience, here are the things that I've done, and things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's skip ahead. So we've got a couple more topics that we have on the list of things we'd like to talk about. But I want to skip ahead because I think this LinkedIn conversation leads to a perfect segue into the idea of learning from mistakes and building community. And I think I worked with a guy years ago who would not admit a mistake ever, would take credit for everybody's work always. There is value in publicly admitting, hey, I made a mistake here. Let's all learn from it. My LinkedIn page, which is not the best in the world, but it's not bad. But at the top, it's I'm dyslexic, so I sometimes misspell things and do not catch it. So for probably 3 years, I had on my LinkedIn page, Thomas H. Humphrey or Hal Humphreys, and it said specializing in litigation, SUPPOT, support. I just left the R out. It didn't say support. And a friend of mine circled it on a screen capture and sent it to me in a text. I'm like, oh my goodness. Instead of trying to hide from it, I took the screen cap photo, put it on my LinkedIn page, and said, you need friends like this that will call out your mistakes in a kind and helpful way. And I've gotten so many people comment and call me on that one post. It's an absolute public blunder. Someone could look at it and think, God, he can't even spell support. He's an idiot. He doesn't care enough about his brand. He made a mistake. No, it's turned into a really good thing. It's been a conversation builder. So talk to me about mistakes and building community.
I think, we sort of reiterate over and over again. We're talking about relationships here, and what we're talking about is our real human beings. When I was in law school, there was always like talk about how, if you make one little mistake in your reputation, but this is not really true. Human beings know other human beings. Professionals know other professionals. My clients make mistakes all the time. I see it in their pleadings. I'm looking at their pleadings all the time, and I see that there's typos and other things because they're just human beings doing human work. And even when you have editors and you have someone looking over your stuff, mistakes creep in. You might even make an error in judgment. You might miss a deadline. It happens to everyone. And your frustration, Hal, with this boss of yours was really rooted in the sense like, just act like a human being. It's okay. No one's expecting you to be perfect. Like, my daughter is 11 years old, and when she was in the kindergarten, first grade, they would have these signs in the classrooms would say, "Everyone makes mistakes."
And I would not see that.
And what they're trying to do with these kids is do something which I think is really important and give them a sense like, yeah, you're going to stumble. It's no big deal. The whole point is to learn and to grow. And when I share mistakes on LinkedIn, part of it is I'm trying to like, here's a trap that you might fall into. Other private investigators, be careful. And yes, and I'm signaling like, I'm comfortable having made mistakes and telling you I've made a mistake. And lawyers and your clients need you to be able to do that, because I have had times where I made a mistake and I had to own up to it. And if I didn't own up to it, it was going to cause a big problem for the client.
Yeah.
And that's much worse than just, look, even if that client never calls for you again, you still need to own up to your mistakes because you made a mistake. Like,
and I think
generally in life, you need to own up to the errors you make and try to repair them. But it shows the other person that they can trust you to follow up and make sure that it gets tied off in the end.
It builds trust. Again, I mean, look, and I want to caution our viewers. Here's the thing. If you take credit for everything, if you say, I did this, I did that, I did this, and you're clearly taking credit for your friend's work or your employee's work or another investigator's work, the people you're talking to, they see through that and they don't appreciate it. I've gotten more work by referring people to other investigators. Number one, that's one of the biggest things I've gotten relationships out of. The other one is of my clients right now, and it's a small group. I've pared it down to a fairly small group of clients, but they love the fact that I will say, hey, thanks for the compliment. It wasn't me. It was Avi, or it was Stephanie, or it was whoever. I mean, giving credit where credit is due. does not take anything away from you. It makes you look like a leader. And that is important to your clients as well. So I think this idea of admitting mistakes, if it's and Avi, you and I both work in a world where you can't always talk about the mistakes because maybe it's in the middle of a case or a litigation, whatever. But as soon as you can, if you think other investigators can learn from that mistake, number one, you're not going to look stupid. Number two, you're going to help somebody else out. And number three, your clients are most likely going to appreciate that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a nicer, more comfortable way to do your business too. To
Yeah.
not be trying to like cover up your look. It's just like when you're a kid. Like, what did your father say? Like it's much harder to live with a lie than to just resolve it.
Yeah.
You make a mistake, you're gonna like have it inside you, and then you're gonna be afraid of the outcome. Whereas you make a mistake in your personal life, your professional life, just take it by the horns, resolve it. People appreciate that level of maturity. And it's good modeling for your children if you have children. Like I like doing that. I'll be at the dinner table and it's nice that my daughter can hear, or if my wife makes a mistake at work, she hears like, oh, we did something and then we had to fix it because we didn't get it quite right. And if you're a father, if you have parents who just are like, I'm always right, I'm never wrong, and whatever, then the child doesn't feel that they're going to have space to make mistakes either.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. Look, we're like 4 minutes away from the top of the hour. I've got Avi for an hour. I've got an hour carved out for this. Let's leave some room here, Avi. We did not get to the art of saying no to our clients. I think
Mhm.
that's an important thing to talk about. Maybe we'll hit that in a podcast later on. But any questions from the crowd, Stephanie? And if you want to unmute yourself, Stephanie, and hop in here and talk to us about any questions you noticed in the chat throughout the presentation. And I don't know if Stephanie's
I don't see any here.
okay.
If
Okay.
anybody has anything, you can drop it in the chat there.
Someone asked me, Hal, in my LinkedIn post, what I thought about sort of professional associations and things like that. And so I could just take the opportunity to say I think that's a very good thing to be involved in.
Yeah.
You've probably seen me on LinkedIn. I said a couple times people should join their local state PI investigations web organization. There's great listservs out there. They give you a lot of information about what other people are doing. I think that's a really great way to get insight. If you're a new private investigator and you just don't really know much about the industry, if you just spend a month following the California Association of Licensed Investigators listserv, you would have a really good perspective on like what the concerns and ideas and things are that people are doing, and help you. I get ideas sometimes from it of like different business lines or something where I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do something like that. I wonder if I could sell that. Very helpful.
Yeah, I do presentations at PI organizations around the country, and the thing that I'm always impressed with is if you've got a PI organization in your state, join it. What you're going to find is realistically, you're going to find some people that are kind of jerks. You're going to find this core group of people, investigators that are there to help other investigators, that are there to network and support each other. That kernel of really helpful people, that's what you're looking for. And the best way to find it is be a member of your local organization. We've got somebody talking about NCISS. Again, great organization. I'm a retired member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, been one of the best organizations I've ever been a part of. I don't do a lot of fraud work anymore, so I've retired my certificate, but I'm still a member of the organization because it's incredibly useful. Avi, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I literally cannot thank you enough. I've enjoyed the time with you, and I will ask you right here in front of everybody, join me on a podcast. Let's hit these last two little bits.
You got anytime, Hal. I love chatting with you. Think I love chatting about this work very much, and great to be here. Always glad to be part of anything that you're doing, Hal. You guys are really leaders in this, and I really appreciate the hard work you guys are doing to raise the level of professionalism in the industry.
Well, I will tell you this. This work is not possible without the efforts, the unfailing, never ceasing efforts of Stephanie Mitchell. She basically runs PI education by herself, and she tells me where to show up and where to talk and what not to say. But like, she is the person that runs this thing, and hats off to Stephanie for that. Okay, guys, thank you all so much for being here today. That's right at an hour's worth of webinar. If you have questions and you'd like to get in touch with us, you can reach me at hal@storyboardemp.com. My contact is available through the website, through PI Education. Stephanie, if you don't mind, you can pop that in the chat feature if you want to. Avi, how do they get in touch with you?
Best way is find me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to do informational interviews with new investigators or anyone else who just wants to chat about anything related to the industry. Just find me on LinkedIn. I'm very, very easy to find. And then we can always set up a meeting, email, whatever you like.
I love it. Avi, thanks again. Stephanie, thanks for setting us up. Everybody in the room, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.